John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
So here you have this interesting thing happening between Thoth and Enoch. Enoch fell from grace here, but he came back later because of what had happened. And that's where, after this period, he became a CDD plate speaker, where he had been entrusted. But again, in 10 AD, he decided to go in the other direction, and until 1983 AD. So there's the people that are channeling and bringing through information and talking to these people, these are who they're talking to. All right, can we put the next one up, please? Yeah, it's just, I was amazed when I started to get the history coming off the place of, oh my God. Like, oh no, I have to tell people that? Do I really have to expose that? They like Enoch and Thoth, All right, the progression continues. 9560 BC, Luciferian covenant. Now there wasn't a major pole shift after that. It was a slight pole shift, and there was another small glacial period after that 10,500 BC thing. And if you look back into some science, like science theory, they're telling us that certain parts, there seemed to be a quick freeze during that period of time, about 10,000 years ago or so. They're not exactly sure when it happened. So these fit in with what some of the geological information that our scientists are finding. All right, 9560 BC, Luciferian covenant, Pleiadian Nibiru, Samjaji, Luciferian Anunnaki, the blondes. Okay, if you have anything to do with the UFO movement down in the States, people talk about the blondes or the Nordics a lot. They're the pretty ones. They look like humans and they're very blonde. That's these guys. All right, they're the ones that raided Procyon to get those pretty blonde bodies. Cirrus B, Marduk Anunnaki, which are the Anunnaki Omicron dragon moth ones, Enlil which are Anunnaki reptile avian, Thoth Enki Zephelium, which are Anunnaki Zeta, and Marduk Necromaton Luciferian, which are Anunnaki Alpha Omega Centauri Blue Centaurs. All right, see all these forms? They've hybridized all over the place to create more of their races. All right, all of these guys got together, and Galactic Federation, and the Nohasa Atlantis Jehovian or Antia, which were like from seeding one Illuminati race lines that had been living in inner Earth, and they were starting to filter back up. All right, they all, and their respective Anu-Melchizedek races, which are the ones, the Anu-Melchizedeks are the hybrids that became the Leviathan races that started in Atlantis. Okay, they entered a full alliance under a one world order anti-Christos agenda, formally mandated through the Luciferian covenant. It was called the Luciferian covenant. It was an agreement that they made that, okay, though we don't like each other very much, we're going to get this done. If we team up, even though we don't like each other, and decide before the fact who's going to get what once we grab it, at least we'll get it. And they knew, too, that it was getting to the point where the founders were very serious. They might have had a stalemate last time. The founders were not going to fail to get the Christos realignment mission done this time. They were not, they just, the Illuminati races knew that. The fallen angelics knew that. So they were going to give it their all to make sure the Christos realignment didn't happen. So this was a coalition that they made, that even though we don't like each other, we'll be friendly enemies so we get the job done. So they stopped the founders from doing the Christos realignment mission, which would close the fallen angelic matrix from this time matrix. Okay, 9,000, okay. So they agreed to have this one world order agenda together. Now, at the same time that these guys were getting together, the Omicron Draconian and Odedicron Reptilian races of Orion, they form a second competing Orion Draconian one world order agenda. They didn't like these guys, so they were going to form their own coalition. Then, at the same time, the main Cirrus A Jehovian Anunnaki, which are bipedal dolphin people Anunnaki, that race, they formed a third competing Jehovian one world order agenda. So you had three competing world dominion agendas that were set in motion during this period in reaction, really, to the Luciferian covenant. They'd always had their dominion agendas, but they got very serious about them. When this coalition formed, these other two, the Draconian agenda ones and the pure strain Jehovian Anunnaki ones that didn't like the other Anunnaki races, they all got very serious about their one world order dominion agendas. 9558 BC, Atlantean. All right, then we have what we talked about before, the 3,000, or what Az had read about, the 3,470 BC Babylon Massacre, Galactic Federation, Luciferian, Palladian, and Nibiru and Anunnaki races, Steel Ark of the Covenant Gold Box, and Stargate tools. They attempt world dominion beginning in Marduk Anunnaki Draconian held Babylon. So Galactic Federation and these guys, the Toth guys, go after the Draconian Anunnaki, the Marduk crew, that are holding Babylon. They create temporary planetary magnetic grid collapse. They use arc tools at Babylon and Nibiru and data crystal grid at Stonehenge, England, to create a reverse fire letter sequence distortions, further ones, in the planetary grids, which cause major mutations in the function of the angelic human DNA template, erases race memory, because what was really getting on their nerves was the Marduk Anunnaki group, who's in competition with them. They have a draconian agenda. They had Babylon. They were progressively getting control of more grids, and it looked like they were going to get control of Stargate and QSite 10. And that could be a real problem. If you're going after Gate 11, you're going to have an issue happening. So they more than just wanting to neutralize the angelic humans, they wanted to erase the memory matrix and make it very difficult for the Leviathan races to communicate with each other, because they wanted to break up this little stronghold that was happening here. So they purposely contrived a way to use the checkerboard matrix mathematicals to create very specific mutations that would reverse part of the DNA, leave part of it normal. Reverse part, leave part normal. Which would mean half of your language signals would be backwards. Right now, our languages, we were talking about this last night, our languages, if you look at our alphabet in English, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? If you took it and went like A, B, C, and then D, E, A, B, C, D, I think it's on threes. A, B, C would be straight, let's say. Then you'd have E, F, G, you'd actually reverse them. F, E, G, you'd have to reverse every set of them to actually get the actual language that was there. We had to be given new languages to be able to speak again and to communicate again. And this is where Toth likes to, and Galactic Federation like to say, oh, we came in and gave you languages. Yes, after you took them away, you know. Because the DNA and how it's sequenced determines what kind of sound frequencies we can process into cognition. And when they scrambled the DNA to the level that they did here, the old languages that we knew from Atlantis, we couldn't read them, we couldn't understand them, we couldn't make the sounds anymore. And this is part of the healing that will progressively take place. That's why when we use the Mua language translations to the clearest that they can be translated right now, those translations are progressively helping us to restore the original data banks on language that belong to this race. Okay. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Okay, they use the art tools, so they're trying to go after these guys to neutralize them and take care of the human races while they're at it. So they literally erased the memory records as well, where we'd have partial memory, and then the other part would be Nibiruan memory, where they literally plugged their memory grids. They started running holographic inserts, which are kind of like virtual reality pictures, down through the Nibiruan dotted crystal grid, down into the planetary radial body, which is like a projection screen. So for us to have memory, we are directly tapped into our personal radial bodies, which tap into the planetary radial body. So we started, the parts of our codes that were the normal, that weren't reversed, would hold the actual human memory. Then the other parts that were reversed would start to download Nibiruan memory, where we would progressively begin to build up the Nibiruan memory imprint, progressively reversing more of our DNA. Eventually we'll be talking totally backwards, compared to what we used to. And this has been the process by which, right now, we sit here, we don't remember who we are. We can't remember our other time vectors. And when we try to start remembering, we try to start pulling incarnational data, you can find all sorts of wacky stuff in there, stuff that doesn't quite sequence the right way. Because there's stuff spliced in between the natural sequence that wasn't meant to be there, and parts of the natural sequence were literally edited out of the memory banks on a planetary level. What we're doing with the Vecca codes, we're working with them, the Vecca codes put back the divine blueprint frequencies and the primal light and sound frequencies back into the planetary radial body and into our own, which means it's allowing the field to form again, the sound light field, that will allow the natural sequencing of our memory records on a planetary and a personal level to start coming back. Okay, let's see. Okay, all right, now when they do this, erase the memory, it blocks the natural kundalini flow in the body. This mutation that they did through the grids. It not only did all those things and erased the memory, but it blocks the natural kundalini flow in the body, causing pineal, thalamus, hypothalamus, and thyroid gland malfunctions that shorten human lifespan and block interdimensional perception in all but implanted Anu Melchizedek chosen ones, and it scrambles the natural language patterns. This was recorded as a Tower of Babel event. Now here, these body things that have taken place in our bodies since this time, because these glands, pineal is like sitting there dormant, and our scientists tell us it's like, atrophied because it doesn't do anything anymore. They have no idea what it did, right? It helped us ascend. That's what it did. These organs have been progressively malfunctioning, and the malfunction gets worse, a little bit worse with each generation, because each generation amplifies whatever coding it has. Now, these things create the chemicals that are created in the body, the biochemicals that are created in the body and in the brain because of these malfunctions, literally progressively poison the body to the point where it shortened its lifespan hugely, where even before these mutations, at least I think we lived about 800 years, 800 to 1,000 years then. Before that, we were immortal, and they took that away by the first level by first cutting off the D12 frequency. Then after that, they amplified that, and we were able to live shorter periods when they did the 25,500 BC Nibiruan dotted crystal grid. Then they amplified it again and took us from at least having an 800 to 1,000 year lifespan down to having 75 to 100 year lifespan, and that's what we have now. I mean, this stuff is nasty. It just amazes me what kind of mentality could actually do that and live with itself. A very sick one, obviously. What's scary is it's not just a person. It's not just a mass murderer who you see in an interview and you see that there's no, literally soulless being that has no remorse or anything. These are races. These are whole races of beings that function with that kind of mentality. Okay. Now, 2668 BC.
Hey guys, welcome. It's Andre Hodge, Seven of Truth, Infinite Potential Healing with you once more. I hope this finds you well. I hope you're in a good state. I hope you've had an awesome week. For those in the future that aren't here in this real-time sort of offering, early October 2022, the past week has been pretty epic on the solar flare factor. So I hope you guys have done well and you've explored and contemplated with it deeply. It's usually quite interesting. In the past, if you've been thorough with me, I've offered some missions relative to galactic special forces work, and some of them have coincided with the sun working in that way, offering us some pretty potent energies. And I don't know how you are with them, but at times I can be really lethargic and shut down and nappy and stuff. For me, this particular one has been a very potent time. So my previous weekend I offered recalibration to a new energetic reality part 3, and I was doing it quite late in the day. I got a real burst on my Sunday, which is a pretty rare time for me to do it, but I felt really good, and it was poetic because it was daylight saving here. I left it a bit late, so I didn't finish off what I wanted to say, so I'm just going to do that quick before I get into this one. So the 3 main images are this. So this is the one I said, I'm just going to do this quick because it will overlay with this one, it will be beneficial. So this is the recalibration part 2 image that I sort of defined everything, and long story short, say if it's galactic or Earth or collective scale or the individual, the thing that you can control is yourself. So what I've sort of said is self-mastery is makes everything better. Like, focus on what you can control and master. It'll make everything else easier and clearer. And you know, I'm big on healing and saying all that sort of stuff. So trauma and all that can contort the perception sort of thing. So you can have doubt and lack of ability to splice things up and stuff like that. So because I'm going to offer teachings relative to stuff I've said before, I had real potent creative with my images during this week. So I've expanded them and maybe made them a lot more helpful and clearer. And I'm going to offer some of my mechanics again in a different way that might be very potent now, that you can all employ as a variable in your algorithm of what you do. And yeah, well, I've got something pretty cool I've worked out. But so I just offered that first, and then what I'll do is I'll show you the one that I offered that expands upon this one. So it evolved a little bit. This is the part 3, recalibration to a new energetic reality part 3. But I didn't really say the self-mastery is the key, alright? What I included was the narrative events, alright? And what I was getting to is a lot of things over, say, the 12 months or whatever. I've expanded a lot. I've incorporated a new teacher, which I've offered many times and stuff. Basically, what I didn't include in that recalibration part 3, and I don't want to get into this too much because time's getting late, and I don't want this to be too long as always. Like these vertical lines. What I sort of said, it was always interesting that relative to the future, things just seem to unfold, and there's an unknown, and that's going to refer to the trading methodology of perception, riding the reality versus the trader versus the herd sort of thing. Events seem to be always unfolding. So imagine this is just like a steamroller, rolls on and stuff. And what I've sort of appreciated is that there's significant events in the narrative that affect a lot. So like the Queen's death, that last line in the narrative is a very big event in the world, alright? And so what I've sort of drawn there is all the interactions and overlays of that sort of stuff, right? What I was getting to, and I didn't include it, and it was valid that I didn't include it, alright? Because what I was sort of doing in the pattern recognition, using all the variables in the algorithm, which I've sort of expanded on and I'll show you now. If all these variables, as I said, are all information data sets and they all may overlap and stuff, there's many sort of diagrams like this, like whether it's like psychology and all that sort of stuff out there. But what I was saying is future, alright? The future, if you can see. I can't see. But what I was getting to is, there is some algorithm that if you include all the data and all the sets and all that, that future prediction is an option. And a lot of people, they go to spiritual people and they want a reading and they want the lottery numbers and all that sort of crap because they've got agendas, governed by money, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it was just like I'm a problem solver. I come from an IT professional background. My whole thing is professionalism and solution orientated. With my healings and information and all that sort of stuff, I am solution orientated. Most people aren't really. You listen to a lot of people, they have no idea about solutions. They're just offering all the questions, alright, and the mystery of things. And a lot of people gravitate to mystery and uncomfortable truths versus comfortable unfamiliarities and stuff like that. And that's all cool. The truth isn't always as sexy or as interesting as the unknown, right? And the quest to know is actually one of my greatest appreciations is discovery, right? The unfolding of awareness is something I get a lot of nourishment from. So to me, actually knowing the future, in many respects, I appreciate the unknown aspect of it and the real-time exploration of how you handle those moments and those pressure fire sort of situations. That's why when I was an IT engineer, I'd go into the crises when no one else wanted to deal with. And I wasn't the best, I was just very good. I had a real awesome team of people that I worked with that were top of their game, and it was really enjoyable to work with a high level professional bunch of people that you could rely on, like special forces, alright? So yeah, what I wanted to do is just follow up on that and say how that concept of the lines, there's future narrative events that are brewing and stuff, and there's all these variables out there that we can probably perceive against and stuff like that, alright? So that's just a concept I didn't include in that and I wanted to offer here. So it's getting quite late for me here, and I don't know how much light there's going to be, so I'm just going to get into it. So this, I was considering of calling my week. As I said, I was brewing a lot. I got a pretty epic download, alright? And I'll just show you an image quick. It was too big for me to sort of work out and offer, and I was like, freaking, how do I explain this? I mentioned my IT background. I have a very good IT background. So I appreciate technology and those sort of things. And I've always had this fascination about the internet because it's been a phenomenal unfolding of the narrative, reality, and opportunity for humanity. But I also got this, and I've said it a long time in the past, and it goes with the Echo series. So this one will be your own perception authority, and it was going to be a separate teaching on its own, but I've worked out how to explain it because this will be the lead on to the next one, and I might do that one next weekend or whatever. And I might be doing this really quick, and it might be more of an overview, and I'll go deeper on that one next time if I miss stuff, because I'm just going in the flow. I've got a bit of a script and it's quite long, and I've got the pressure of light. It's pretty good at the moment, but I think it's going to go dim, and I don't really want this to be too long. I'm also going to include quite a few clips, and my aim of the clips is to actually focus on the Babylon massacre, because that happened at 3,470 BC, about 5,500 years ago, and it set us up for now, right? And I've talked about it in the past, but it's a good time to revisit it.
We have one more level to go as far as our avatar identity, one more density level, density 4. In density 4, we have the first black heart. It's called the Heart of Merlin. It's the D10.75 implant that draws attachments into the D11 trion field, the DNA strand templates 10 and 11, chakras 10 and 11, and the density 4 atomic etheric elemental emotional bodies of the avatar body. That's the one that will help us to be severed completely at D11.5 and rotated out of our own template. That's what they're trying to do on a planetary level here. And anybody that goes down with the planet has that happen. It's literally like you have your template here, and you're in here, and your primal light fields in direct connection to source are here. Well, it's like cutting out the middle, flipping it backwards, and throwing it down a hole. It's still within the greater consciousness of source, but it's cut off completely from its template that allows the communication lines to be open. So, elemental figment and shadow dancer attachment power centers linked to the D2 aspect of the density 1 telluric shield. We've talked about our shields before. Now, I'll show some of this. The people who have had Cathari, you know what I'm talking about with the shields, but the density 1 telluric shield, when it's activated, comes out as a disk of light and sound waves here. Okay, so that's where one of the density 1 power center attaches there. The D5, they attach to the D5 aspect of the density 2 Doradic shield, the D8 aspect or monadic core of the density 3 Turic shield, and the D11 aspect of the density 4 Maharic shield. It's a Maharic shield implant, the last one. As the black heart implants are located in the shields, the distorted scalar templates of elemental, figment, and shadow dancer attachments bond to the reversed matrix implant in the host shield and subsequently manifest as scalar wave reversals called overlays within each density level of the host's DNA template. The 4 black heart implants and their overlay attachments manifest in DNA strand templates 2, 5, 8, 11, which are the 4 primary control strands in the 12-strand DNA template. Programs carried in the 4 primary control strands manifest replica programs in the strands immediately above and below. The 4 black heart Metatron implants, have been only 2/3 activated since the 3470 BC Babylon massacre, Tower of Babel Bible story, which we've talked about in the Voyagers books and some other workshops, when the Wesedex implemented partial activation of the 4th heart of Anubis implant, through which the density 1 radial body memory matrix of Earth and humanity was partially wiped, and the Wesedek Nephilim net field artificial Metatronic radial body and its intentionally scripted false memory complex were activated with our planetary shields and collective consciousness radial fields. Now, we've known about the ones, people who have followed this work, but we were given information quite a bit ago. We were getting the information on what's happened to our Templar about the 3470 BC Babylon massacre. They called it Babylon because that's the Tower of Babel story, where after it was done, we were babbling on ever since. Nobody could speak the same language. What this did, I never understood quite how it was done. It was never explained how it was done. It was done through partially activating the black heart that's centered down here in the density 1 body. And it literally, this happened within a couple hours on one day. One day. It took a race that was way far advanced to us, completely destroyed its language patterns. They had to be re-educated in language. They came in and taught us partial reversal languages. The languages we have now are partially original human and partially have coding that stimulates the implants in the DNA template. But literally in one day, using this technology had the ability to wipe a race's memory clean, completely. They didn't know who they were. It was like an electromagnetic wave that moved through the atmosphere. Now science is already figuring out here that magnetics affect the function of the brain and the DNA. Well, this was major magnetics. This is why we haven't a clue of who we are right now. This is also what caused the next level of mutation that made us, I think at that point we were living quite a bit longer, that limited our Earth, like our body's lifespan to the 70 to 100 years if we're lucky, because it created horrible chemical mutations. All these things we're talking about, every shadow dancer connection, every figment connection, every elemental connection that's reverse matrix, it has what's called chemical claws. Each of them manifest as a chemical or hormonal substance or viral substance or bacterial substance within the body that doesn't belong there. The body eats itself alive, technically. These are real things that are manifest, particularly in the hormone systems, within the DNA chains themselves. It's mismatched the way the nucleotide bases in the chemical DNA are supposed to be lined up with each other. It's completely mismatched them and turned off 3/4 of them. So this is like heavy stuff that's going on here. It's not just fluffy stuff about auroric fields. It's about the chemicals that make up the atoms in our body and the chemicals that allow our brains to function here. So it just amazed me, and this is where I started to think, oh boy, I can hardly wait till tomorrow's transmission after the end of this. Because I kept in mind that that was something I didn't realize quite as much. It just hit me when they said that it was just activation of just that one, and only like 2/3 activation of it, that did that in one day.
My aim of the clips is to actually focus on the Babylon massacre, because that happened at 3,470 BC, about 5,500 years ago, and it set us up for now, right? And I've talked about it in the past, but it's a good time to revisit it, because it's still at play and it's still affecting us. But this technology expression that I got, like, even it goes into transhumanism. So there's a big push at the moment, because what I'm getting is that there's the organic internet connected to the earth is there, and it's bubbling up. And so the real clamping down on our DNA tech is to avoid that source connection to earth, despite all the frackery that's gone on, alright? So I'll just do that overview, and I won't get into it too much, because I'm not really going to focus on the technology thing here. I'm just going to plant some seeds for the future to go into it a lot deeper. So just think about technology versus innate, alright? So I've got this diagram, and this will be the overview, and then I'm going to get into sort of details and sort of concepts and stuff, right? Because I've sort of worked a lot out. Alright, so I'm going to show you this. So, as I said, I'm not going to get too much into it. I just want to get the concepts out there. Alright. So on this side over here, that's the left for me. That's the right for me. So I've got the narrative sort of perception. Alright. So I'm going to have these images next to me. So the spiritual narrative that I've sort of accepted in the past was there's been a natural tech, like spirituality, versus external technology, right? So the metaphor of that is what I appreciated up until recently has been Lemuria versus Atlantis. Lemuria were very spiritual, Atlantis were very technology orientated, right? So if you see the diagram, the green is related to spiritual, innate DNA stuff. The red is technology. So this is the narrative in the spiritual community that I've sort of accepted, alright, for quite a while. So what it's very simple, but it's just trying to get to the point, alright? So the eras, the time goes down on the right side, or left side, depending which way you're seeing it on the screen. I'm a bit out there at the moment, but the bottom is that there's a resurgence to appreciation of our DNA tech. Does that make sense? All right. So if I go over to this is what I've come to appreciate, though, that gaining the new data relative to Ashayana, it's very different. And it's relative to the guardians, founder beings, and defending the universe and Earth from the Phantom Matrix hijackers, and trying to dominate everything and take everything into the Phantom Matrix, right? So what I'm sort of inviting is that there's all these seedings and effort to birth and seed the original indigos, guardians, founder beings, and all that sort of stuff. But then there's this epic war, right, on the spiritual community and the core teachings. And as I've said, like recently in the last few videos, I've created a web page where I've offered recordings, all right, of the Ashayana core teachings, okay? That out of 1,600 hours, 81 lectures and stuff, I've just offered some codex sort of core foundational teachings, alright? And so the relentlessness of the domination has been so epic, right? And as I said, I'm aiming to include clips of basically the Babylon massacre, because all the big scales are pretty cool, alright? But what we've got to do is focus on now. So what I said is that the battle over our innate DNA tech versus technology, technology is sort of, there's nothing wrong with it. It's very cool. Like the internet has offered us the ability to connect. I wouldn't be able to be read or seen without it and stuff. But what I'm inviting is that there's something more. Right? So say if I use some of the diagrams in the past that I've used in this series, I've talked about how there was always going to be, despite all this domination, there was always going to be the potential of our spiritual bubbling up. Alright? And so all that was predicted. All these teachers have been put out there. Alright? And a lot of it's the truth and all that. It comes down to it being a free will universe. There's nothing wrong with false teachers and all that sort of stuff. It's about what you choose in it. I'm just offering the variables of it's been more of a Wild West of a community versus what we actually think in pure love and light and everything's good and stuff. A lot of set up for failures. And so just see our relentlessness, and I'll get into this more in all details, but I'm just offering it as a context now. So despite all that domination which I've explored in the past episodes and stuff, we as a soul, as a species, and even when I get into this recording at the end, it just offers you how badass we are, right? And we're relentless. So if you're hearing that, you know, it can feel very formidable and oppressive and no hope and all that, but just see that even the World Economic Forum trying to push the transhuman sort of stuff to insert stuff in us is, to me, it's to hijack our innate connection to the earth, right, and insert technology to censor our truth, right, on the DNA level. That's how epic we are, right? So I'm going to move on. So I've showed this very early on because I'm talking about the Babylon massacre and stuff, and I've offered clips about the radio body and that, right, where our nature was smashed. There was a gap, right? We had a gravitation. They inserted the radio body, such as the Akashic records and stuff, so that Metatron and all that sort of stuff inserted their stuff into us, right, and disconnected us from Earth. Because what I'm getting, alright, just a long story short, because time is going, is that there's a huge opportunity for us to something bubbling up in the earth, and that's why all this stuff is done, to get ahead of it, and we co-create with it in free will by accepting it, sort of thing. And what I'm getting is, I'm not trying to, there's a lot of good people that probably tap into the Akashic records. If you go back to Infinity and Beyond number 4, with the first time I had a public thing with Carlene Tamik, she gets into the very specifics of the frequencies and the language. It's Akashic AE records. And I'll just say the truth versus the Nibiru falsehood overlay, alright? So what I'm suggesting is, if you are an Akashic record reader, alright, and you're aligned with this sort of stuff, perhaps you're picking up that, alright? But also it's time to go deeper. Alright, it's time to get beyond that, and there's a whole another layer of potential there. And what I will get to at the end, long story short, is the Earth source internet is available to all of us naturally. We don't have to go via these little middlemen and stuff like that. Alright, that's the that's what I got, and I'm doing a journey to get there, if that makes sense. So I'll just show you another image. So this is another drawing of that, alright? And I'm not going to get into these too much. I'm going to talk about them a bit later, alright? And so this is sort of what's going on, and I'll explain this in a bit more detail a bit later, alright? Because we're all set up for failure, and I've gotten some reverse matrix sort of stuff of things, alright? And that's where I've drawn more, alright? And I'm not going to get into these too much. I'm just going to plant the seed that there's interesting concepts, and I'm getting the true source internet that we should be naturally connected to is bubbling up, and that's why all this effort with the technology and stuff going into us is to prevent, right? And it's all coming like if you see at the bottom, the bureau, and I'm getting a lot is actually coming from there. That's what I got with the AI stuff potentially, right? So this being about be your own perception authority, okay? Just think about that. Be your own perception authority. It sounds easy, but it's quite challenging with sort of the teachings and teachers out there and stuff, right? So in the past, I used to do this intro clip about consciousness Tetris. So in my doodling this week of images and stuff, because I was processing all this information, trying to know how to translate it to be very simple and elegant, but also be a invitation to expand your pattern recognition and concepts and by all these variables I offer, right? So one of the drawings I did was a updated version of my consciousness Tetris. So I'll just show you it here, right? Because this particular teaching, I'll give you an example of expanding your consciousness Tetris relative to new data and the unlocking of levels that it might have, right? So this is an example of consciousness Tetris in a different way, right? So I've got red, black, and green. So let's say green is truth. The black is just data, information flack and stuff, narrative stuff, and the red is falsehood, right? So myself, alright, the way I've always been is be like a sponge. Invest in everything, absorb everything, put it in the background like your algorithm and stuff, and see how that goes, alright? Everything is potential to be everything all at once, and with context, such as triangulation of truth, or coming across a codex of information and stuff, or appreciating infiltrators or whatever. You know what I mean? There's all these variables, and it's not just 3D 5 cents, it's multi-dimensional. And it's really interesting. Cliff Hire released a video this week. He got some temporal sort of things relative to the academia, and there was a big about the peer review sort of process, which is like a collective sort of input sort of method of information expansion that goes on in society and stuff, and it's an external validation sort of thing that our society has, and so there can be infiltrators and all sorts of stuff in that shut down the truth and compromise it and all that sort of stuff, and humanity isn't even appreciative of the incarnation war that we're in, blah blah blah. But all I'm just offering this is, you know, if you've got issues with trust and all that sort of stuff, you might have baggage relative to in judgment of people, and you reduce the information. You might be contorting the information you accept as wrong when it's not, and all that sort of stuff. And my attitude is, my first principle of existence is, how was I wrong in this moment? Because we can always be wrong constantly. So there's nothing wrong about being wrong. It's just I enjoy being wrong, and I invite it because it offers me that I had a greater level of perception I previously didn't realize. So it's like a confirmation that I've got infinite potential. So I expand and I recalibrate, and I see what consciousness Tetris layers that unfolds. But what I'm just suggesting here is that when you get a shift, it might be just one block, but you can see a lattice of relationship that might require change and investment, right? But then you might have acquired wrong data that was blocking you. Then you can change it at any time, and you realize you were right or wrong or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm just suggesting that change is a constant, and appreciating new information is always going to happen. And the reality can throw a lot of red bricks at you if you are on the trail of truth. Like, the resistance can increase, which confirms that you might be truth. A lot of people might shy away from that, but it's a validation sort of thing, all right? So if I just show you an old image that I haven't shown for a while. So when you, in IT, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out program. So when you acquire falsehood, sort of incorrect data, your lattice of foundation of perception isn't a great foundation to launch from, all right? So if I show you the other image, when you acquire new data, it can make everything very easy to perceive. And this video at the end, I'm going to offer you something really cool, how I have evolved with new understanding. And you can take it away whatever you want, but you'll be able to see some interesting stuff, right? So just appreciate that, all right? So I'm just going to offer you me as a variable, as a teacher, the way I see things and offer myself. The transparency thing that's been said in the past and stuff. I've done it to be humble and be approachable, and I don't want to set myself as someone exclusive of anything, because I get that, right? And I'll just show you this image. So, there's nothing wrong with this. Boundaries and sort of, I see myself as like a Taoist master. If you watch the series on Netflix called Marco Polo, I enjoy it because there's a Taoist monk who's like a martial artist expert. So I see myself, I like the information martial artists, and it's my dojo. This is my dojo sort of thing. So I'm appreciative of how things are, and translating stuff isn't the easiest of things to do, especially multidimensional, complex, and I've interacted with a lot of people and stuff, so I appreciate that. But to me, it's like a lot of people can talk about terms that aren't really relevant to people, that they're outside their ability to perceive, and I get that as well. They employ concepts that the audience aren't going to be able to achieve, so it creates a codependency on them as an individual, which is a potential lack or agenda as well, right? So this is the way I like to operate. So I've gained all this knowledge. I'm like yelling from a tree saying, look at this, creating all these videos, putting all the teachers there for you to actually tune into and stuff. And I always appreciate the quote that Gandhi had, is reduce yourself to zero and your power becomes infinite. So I've got a rehash of that quote. So me as an expression, when I reduce myself to zero, the potential for all becomes infinite, alright? And you can see, so that's me, and I interact with someone, I work on their level, and I'm trying to make you launch beyond me, alright? There's no competition or anything like that. To me, if I contribute to anyone to get them where they need to be as quick as I can, or they can, because one of the variables, if you've listened to the Babylon Massacre sort of clips, I've got an interesting light being on my left shoulder here, hey buddy, is mortality is against us, time is against us, it's being used as a variable to grind us down, alright? So accumulating awareness as quick as you can is the key, alright? And so, as I said in the past about my DJing sort of era, like that as a metaphor, it took me 9 months to learn how to just link up two songs together to mix them together, called beat mixing. And I went through the long yards of it, blah blah blah, but I condensed time for people where I'd interact with someone and I'd show them how to do it in 5 minutes, So I could condense, and me going the hard yards, I'm pretty hardcore, and I'll give you an appreciation of how hardcore and what goes into me knowing what I do. It's not an accident, and the comfort I have with topics and stuff. But say if a couple hundred people, they save 5 or 10 years, all right? Because to me, I'm probably 5 or 10 years ahead, all right? If Ashayana is 20, maybe I'm 5 or 10, all right? But everything I'm trying to do is create a reduction in that, all right? So yeah, just appreciate teachers out there. If you become better than me, awesome. I'd love to freaking, like, if you can hear some Cuban music in the background, bit of a party locally, but just appreciate that, right? Who do you like? Who do you perceive as teachers and stuff? Maybe discern if they're trying to get stuff from you and stuff, alright? So I'm going to move on. So this is just another simple diagram relative to learning and stuff, alright? So if you're there and you've got potential, to realize that potential, there's an investment, alright? And I'm going to do a video at some point, it's on the list to do, called There's No Shortcut to Self-Mastery, okay? And I've talked about Malcolm Gladwell and Blink. He had another book that's pretty awesome called Outliers, and he talks about these experts in their field and stuff like that. They make everything look easy and such, right? But what he's come to appreciate is there's a lot of good luck or bad luck for if you go the spiritual path, where you can get smashed and stuff to set you up, to clear you out and break all the falsehood down and shatter you, a bit like my path. Whether it can be seen as good luck or bad luck, it is what it is. I made the most of my situation to be here, and I employ the hardship to get better. Right? Like I said, failure isn't failure, it's just an appreciation of a greater level of awareness you didn't really appreciate before. Right? So the journey to realizing a potential, there's an energy cost, an investment, alright? Discipline and dedication and thoroughness, and that's why I say, like, now I'm over a year into Ashayana stuff, and I've been listening almost every night to sleep, especially of late, especially this week with brewing with the solar flares and stuff like that, using the variables and environment and the scenario you're in to do the best you can, sort of thing. So, and potential, as I say, is infinite from my perspective. So you might gain a consciousness Tetris layer, but you might have a break and a plateau, but then there's always more, and there's nothing wrong with the journey to perfection. I don't see perfection as an aim. It's a journey to relentlessly improve and stuff. So that's just a metaphor. You can do it on your own. It might take a long time, and then you can actually seek out help and stuff and clear all the stuff, or assistance and clarity and stuff, alright? So I'll just move on. I'm going to use the metaphor of my trading, alright? And I've shown a herd versus trader and the trend sort of diagram in the past, and what I've done is an updated version this week, alright? So this is it, alright? And I've done it more in relation to accumulation of data and awareness, and owning your power and being your own perception authority, alright? So what I might do is at the end, if I've got time, because I'm doing this quite late in my day, and the Echoes Part 8, it took me 21 hours straight to create, and I was up until 11:30 the next day, and I just got to watch jet lag, because you need to shut down and stuff like that to recover. But just say this, alright? So just say the black line is the trend, alright? And I use stock market as a metaphor in that. But just say it's an information exploration. So you explore teachers and you go crazy, and then you learn shit and you have to discern them and all that sort of stuff. Or you accumulate data over your journey and all that. Left and right, up and down. It's the process of potential realization sort of thing. But say just me, alright? So say I use this as a metaphor of the journey of exploring information and stuff because in a relationship to trading, so this is a review of the contrarian view, basically, because I did that video a while back, and I've also done the Trinity of Choice, and I've said them before, and I've planted to people to go watch them and stuff. But I'll do it in this because it's valid to refresh and offer you why those sort of concepts. So in Trinity of Choice, a lot of it was about baggage and inaction, because people say like there's left and right, up and down, forward and backwards and stuff, but sometimes inaction is valid. Alright, so say if you don't know whether this is true, you don't know whether to apply it. Alright, if I go back to the consciousness Tetris, maybe it's just black blocks, you have no reference to it, right? And you just acquire them, put them into your algorithm, you don't know what to do with them, and that's cool, alright? So there's an inaction variable about it, right? So if you gain a perspective over data or over teacher and stuff, then you might blanket everything all across the board sort of thing and dismiss everything, get rid of it, because it's an actual efficient way to deal with your algorithm. A lot of people have trouble with the individual variables, or if I go, just to go back to the other image, say all the algorithm, all the data you've got in your subconscious cellular memory and all that, or your conscious awareness, to link up all the variables and data, there's an energy investment. Right? And a lot of people don't have the life force free and all that sort of stuff. They've got blocks, implants, chips and all that. If you listen to the clips relative to the Ashayana that I offer, it's a big investment. It's like spiritual consciousness muscle training to carry the weight of all the data in an energetic, respectful, energetic appreciation of it. Right? So that's where people get one black, red variable about an individual and they'll dismiss it all, but I'm just offering that do it with me. I could be wrong here and you can totally dismiss me and like eliminate me as a teacher, or I could be right and then you like get this whole new layer and clear it and have a upgrade sort of thing if you appreciate it and accept it. And that's where I'm suggesting the Ashayana recordings, and I'm incorporating them as teachings and variables, and I've got the website link that will be down to employ and invest in and stuff, because this is a cool metaphor for that. For those of you that have done a lot into that, you'll see it in real time. A lot might get me as a red variable saying this and polarize, and that's cool, and you might undo a lot of that and go back that way and need more discernment and all that sort of stuff, and that's cool. Alright, so say me, right? And I welcome the perception of this, alright? I'll just offer it. It might seem that I'm quite lax, I'm polarized, traumatized, all that sort of stuff, and I'm going a different path because of what happened and all that. And that's cool. You discern me and do that. But what I'll say, this is the sort of thing relative to the currency trader, right? And currency trading is freaking epic. And honestly, back in 2008 and 9 and stuff, when I really got into currency trading from stock trading, I was preparing for this time, right, when the market is hugely volatile and a lot of people are making a lot of money with the volatility at the moment, right? And that's what you want as a trader. You want volatility. You don't like boring, having to wait and all that. And currency trading is like, I don't know. It's like the, I hate to use a drug analogy, but it's like the hardest drug of currency trading, because money is a drug. People are greedy and all that sort of stuff. The energy of money and skin in the game is has a very fascinating thing with the DNA. I'm trying to find the words. I might find a cool word in a sec. it's intoxicating, the conquistador aspect and stuff, and greed and that. You know, the truth isn't revealed by people when things are good, it's when it's bad. And paper trading is like theory, but actual skin in the game energy. There's definitely a appreciation of the DNA sort of money fabric that I call it. It's like an energetic fabric. Money system has been around for a lot of years and all that sort of stuff, but I'm waffling on. So what I'm wanting to get to is offering you how I can own my own authority with information, and I'm using my trading background as an example. Right? So just an overview of my stock trading. And this is how I'm able to appreciate things. I'm taking that contrarian view relative to reading the reality, relative to my journey with stock trading and stuff and currency trading, and I'm employing it as an overlay technology into the information field. So when I say come across someone like Ashayana, because I've been so thorough and dedicated, do the 10,000 hours, like Malcolm Gladwell says, relation to an outlier, which I came across in 2006, that book. You know, it was a fascinating thing. There's always, you know, there's talent and luck, but there's a massive hard work component. And I've always enjoyed that self-mastery. If you remember what I showed you in the recalibration part, you master what you can control and make everything that you can't a lot easier to deal with. I did that in the IT engineering and stuff, expected to solve all the problems in a foreign environment and all that sort of stuff, right? So I've had a lot of instances of those sort of components to the algorithm who I am. So just my trading, and I started stock trading. I got about 15 grand together in 2004, and so I had free cash. And my family scenario was, I didn't feel like I could achieve following the herd. Like everyone was buying houses and stuff. In hindsight, I probably would have, and would have been a better lot, but I didn't feel like I could, because we came up quite poor. I was aiming to buy a house for my mother and then me, sort of thing, to get the government housing that you can buy here in my state, city in Australia, as actually owned. Right? So I didn't feel like I could, if I was to acquire all that, following the herd wasn't the way to do it. I had to go the alternate, contrarian view in life, right? So I thought currency trading, money, or investing in stocks, and it's really interesting. I invested early on in this company called Fortescue Metal. If you know that company, it's one of the biggest mining companies in Australia now. I invested for an instance of how good I am and how chicken shit I am. I actually borrowed money from the bank, and I was going to do something called negative gearing. So the interest I paid on the loan I could use as tax and all that. So if I made profits, and I didn't have to pay tax sort of stuff. So I borrowed like 25 grand, I think, invested in this company called Fortescue Metal really early on, because the mining boom was big in Australia in the early 2000s to the financial collapse and stuff. And perhaps I had my own greed, conquistador and all that, so I appreciate the energy, you know. Being a miner, there's a movie called Gold with Matthew McConaughey, I think, which is pretty interesting, about a charlatan sort of freaking false gold thing. The movie's called Gold. I don't know if Matthew's in it, but I like him. He's pretty cool. So yeah, I invested in this company at $4.36, alright? It went up pretty quick to like $5.50. So I had about, how many stock? I had 5,500. So if it goes up $1, I made 5.5 grand in pretty short time. And then this real negative news came out about the guy. His name's Andrew Forrest. He's one of the richest Australians in the world. And it was just very negative. He's a like salesman, like agenda, money orientated, talking a big game. But the Chinese came out and said he's full of crap, blah, blah, blah. Because he was saying we had all these agreements and all that sort of stuff. A bit like sort of people in the narrative on Twitter calling out things. Because there's these people like Carl Icahn. He's an interesting billionaire out there. And a lot of these famous billionaires and stuff, what they'll do is they'll invest in a stock, alright? They'll go on the news and say, oh yeah, this stock is really good. there's all these herd followers that will go, Carl Atkins onto the stock. Thousands of people will buy the stock, and then the stock will rise after he's bought it and he's talked it. And so he's milking the audience, and then he'll sit on it, or he'll sell into those people buying it, and he'll make a profit. It's all a lot of sham sort of stuff. So the stock dropped, alright? And it dropped to like $2.20 and stuff. So you imagine I bought it went up, bad news, and it crashed. So it went down to half. And trust me, when things are good, you don't sell. When things are bad, you want to get out, alright? So I've been in the herd, okay? And so I sold out. I just like, this is a scam, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Fortescue went up so much with the boom. I think it went up to like $20. Let's just say $20, right? So I went from $4 when I entered to $20. So I would have made 5 times my money. It was a lot more than that. And then what they did, they split. I think it went up to like $100. And then they split it 10 to 1. Alright? And then it still went up. And I think the stock's trading at like $15 or whatever now. So that's about $150. So it works out that if I held on to it, I would have had 55,000 stock at $20. It worked. It might have been $16 because it worked out to be about 900,000. I would have turned 25 grand into 900,000. And he just released the dividend just recently. It was $2 a dividend. So I would have got $20 dividend if the stock wasn't split. $20 by 4,000. So I would have got $80,000 check just this month if I held on to the stock. Right? So huge money. I've been in positions like that, but I got freaked out and all that sort of stuff. So that was just stock trading. So I'm pretty good, but the emotions are pretty epic, right? Like when something crashes like that, it's like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, blah blah blah. Alright? So going back, like I started trading stocks 2004, so it's 18 years, right? And then when I got into currency trading, it was like that on steroids. And a mate lent me 55 grand when I came back from Sydney, and it was like crazy. The very first trade I set up, I told him about this company. I showed my charting because, long story short, 18 years, I reckon I've lost about $500,000, alright? I've read 1,000 books. Not every book once, like many times, and referred to it. Like I used to go to Borders and grab a pile of 20 books and just buy a coffee and devour 20 books in a day. Just like skim. I'd focus on the component of, say, the technical charting of each book and go through all the different perspectives to get the triangulation of truth and stuff like that. So getting many different points of view and forming a conclusion and all that relative to all the data and the different teachers at different things and stuff, and the overlays of different people talking about different perspectives, and that's how I discern truth and all that sort of stuff. Because then I went and traded, and if I traded the wrong information, I freaking lost. But if I went with the truth, it felt polarized. I didn't feel comfortable. So say if I was external validating many different points of view, alright, I was externalizing my perception authority, giving it away, blah blah blah, alright, by seeking opinions and not trusting my gut, or knowing my gut, or having to realize that my gut was yelling at me but I felt polarized to it, the truth and all that sort of stuff. So in the spiritual journey you can feel very visceral, as I said in the past recordings, alright? So influences and stuff, like the visceral is like, if you listen to the clips of Ashayana here, shit can be inserted in us to actually block us from our truth and stuff. And as I showed in the start, that this image, as I showed in the start, a lot of shit has been inserted into us, alright? Okay? And That's the sympathetic resonance to the falsehood. That's why we don't go to truth. That's why it's polarized. People can actually insert shit into your energy field, and I know that's gone on with me, and when you might lean into me for a session and stuff, you get triggered, and it's like electric shock to avoid it. Or you've got stuff inserted into you, and that stuff from past experiences that have been inserted to shut you down for your potential. If I'm a realization of that, it can be like an electric shock and shut you down, and headaches and all that. And that's sort of a confirmation that you can have stuff in you. If you want to think that I've got issues, then cool, but I'm just inviting that is a validation and confirmation that the shit in you is shit scared of me, alright? But anyway, I'll go back. So, yeah, I talked about the money with my mate and stuff, and I got set up because I remember an Australian Prime Minister back then in 2010, he just randomly one day introduced something called a mining tax, and mining in Australia is one of our biggest industries, and to just dump it on the public with no, like, government usually see things, they leak it and all that. There was no leak and all that. So the ironic thing is 2 days before I put trade into this stock, and I went pretty hardcore. I lost 26 of the 50 grand that I had, and I went down to 24 grand. So I was like massively crashed, lost half my money. I'd go down to 7 grand, and I went to hospital. I was very much facing financial oblivion and stuff like that. But I stuck to my guns, alright? Everything was bad. It was like the metaphor in Lord of the Rings 2 when Gandalf comes over the hill to relieve and bring reinforcements. The darkness feels the darkest just before the sunlight, sort of thing. So I held my ground and stuff. I went down to like 7 grand, but then I actually did a awesome trade to build a lot of the money back, and I was on a run. So in 3 months from while I had a hole in my leg and stuff, I turned my 7 grand into 63, so I made 9 times the money in 3 months, and I proved to myself I was legit. I knew what I was doing. If I could dig my way out of a hole from that, like not having much to making a lot is a lot harder than having a lot and making more, alright? So I believed in myself, and there was all this crazy shit. I was really exhausted. I overcame a lot, got a lot of relief from it, and blah blah blah. So what I'm saying about my appreciation of energy and money, and the metaphor of the currency trading and the reality and seeing it with information and stuff, how I was back in 2010 and stuff, I was very insecure. I had a lot of doubt. I didn't trust myself. I hadn't done healing, and I hadn't removed all the baggage and all that sort of stuff. So I was being through a lot of trauma with my ex, shattered. You know, you do the right thing. It was a bit like Braveheart, where he got banished after saving Scotland, sort of thing. It was like the absolute reverse Matrix, flipped, doing amazing things and paying for them, as I've said with Echoes Part 8, alright? Just some crazy shit that goes on that shouldn't be it, alright? You do amazing things, there's an honor sort of code and stuff like that, not cover up and hide because you don't want the person that saves you sort of being known. Because what do you think happens to an audience, alright? Who's this dude that blah blah blah? Anyway, I don't care. It is what it is. I'll own it. The people, and I use it for discernment, and people can tune into my truth and all that. This is what's going on and where I'm at now, because blah blah blah. And you can think I'm polarized with this, and that's cool. But what I'm using this is a teaching on be your own perception authority. Right? And what I'm just doing about all my trading and all this image is that, you know, when I'm not being derogatory about being the trader and stuff. But you just see the market now relative to housing and stuff, and there was like a huge, with all the money invested into the market of recent times, asset prices like houses went crazy. You know, everyone was wanting to get into market and buy houses. May 2nd they raised the interest rates, and what that did is suck money out of the system, right? So free liquidity is gone, right? So speculative assets like Bitcoin and all that go down because the money's being taken out. People, and that's why there are like people say it's always different, but it's not. The variables are different, but the foundation is, and this is a pattern recognition. If you go back to my pattern recognition show, the fundamentals are still there, right? Fundamentals are interesting. At the moment, I'm due to do some multidimensional money system sort of conversations about the variables at play in that. I got this, and this is more important. But my wisdom of the money system has come out of 18 years, probably $500,000 to $1 million lost, 1,000 books, tens of thousands of hours of research, and actual skin in the game, feeling it, feeling my DNA, trying to be in my body, and like I said, all the trauma and all that. I was all sorts of insecure. Like the pressure, those situations bring out your truth, alright? So this is why I'm just offering that relative to me, because I've been through all that and I know all the variables, and there's no shortcut to self-mastery. You can seek assistance with people that know and stuff to help you get through. I clear all the fucking baggage out. To me, like when people have to choose, they want to validate, right? So say if you've got baggage, past traumas, it's like a exoskeleton through your meridians and your body going into your decision points. Alright, I tried to grab a clip of Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, right? If you got Netflix, because it's an amazing variable about baggage, alright? If you just go and watch the first 5 minutes of episode 10, it's the last one, and there's an observer, a journalist, talking about him being a mystic, and his mastery of being in the moment is so profound. And what the journalist says is, Michael Jordan's logic is, why would I think of missing a shot before I've taken it? Alright? So every shot, he's so pure in his moment. He's not bringing all the past failures and all that. So say I talked about failures and I learnt from them and I recalibrated me in them. So like when a stock crashes, that's when you buy. It's reverse matrix. You don't sell. You understand? But to get into the mode in the real time, because you don't see, like when you're up there, it's like, yeah, it's going to go forever, then crash. It's like, oh, it's never going to go, it's never freaking going to rise. That's how it is in real time. So I'm offering this trading metaphor relative to new data and information, alright? Because say everything I do thousands of hours. I explore, I put it into my consciousness Tetris, alright? And I just expand it, and I get rid of what isn't relative from applying to my levels. In actual fact, I'll hold the variables, like 1 or 2 wrong, that's fine, but a consistency, and that's where I'm appreciating the AshayanaDeane and the codex and those recordings I gave, right? Because you might think I'm naive and stuff, and that's cool, but I'm telling you how much I put into stuff as a metaphor in everything I do to be the master of me. Self-mastery has always been being in that crisis mode and being harmonious in the flow. It's my battle. Like I included the Last Samurai clip on my YouTube channel just on Thursday because it's Bushido, like living life in every moment. Like, what's the best you can do this breath, right? So I come across as naive, but trust me, I'm very, very professional, and I know what the frick I'm talking about because I've done the stuff in the background and I'm comfortable. And so now I'm an information trader, and I'm sharing what I get and the recalibration I get, alright? And I'm willing to be contrarian and not worry about follow the herd. I'm looking for the new nugget of wisdom that's going to expand me, alright? So it's getting dark and I want to get on with this. So you just realize that real time in the moment, when you're probably right on the verge of some greatness, all the unresolved stuff is probably going to pop up. And welcome it, see what's there, and look to get beyond it. You can either let it go if it's something that's too hard to let go. You probably need some energy help, alright? So I'll move on. So this is the crutch of the teaching, right? And I'm using a legit teaching out there that I contributed to that I can do, because with the new Ashayana appreciation, I'm seeing it differently. This is a reverse matrix, all right? This is the phantom matrix versus the truth, all right? I'll just get to this. It's getting dark already, and I've probably only got 15-20 minutes, all right? So mid-2018, I did a show with Andrew called The Solar System Update, where I was doing recordings, and that's where he went, all right? And in that Solar System Update, what he said is that one of the very cool, interesting variables at the time was what he said. And one of the concepts he said for a long time was about the quarantine around Earth, right? And the reason he said that there's a quarantine was that humanity were weaponized in the universe and put viruses in and caused a lot of death and out there and stuff like that. So me and I was appreciative of that, because say War of the Worlds video, there's a couple versions out there. The thing that killed the Martians in that was the bacteria in our environment. So we've got a good immune system, but potentially out there, the solar system, other species don't have immune systems. So that's sort of an example of consciousness Tetris, alright? So with that information, alright, I'll show you another image. So as an expression of teaching, who are we to question that? How are we meant to validate it, alright? That's where I say it gave away the perception authority for a long time. So I accept it as a truth. There's no reason to invalidate it. Let's explore it, add it to the consciousness Tetris. But just see that, alright? That's how our concepts can be planted into the reality and stuff, and there's no way to actually validate it. Otherwise, you find aware beings and stuff like that, they might be able to see it, and then they confirm it and stuff. But if I show you the other image, say this one, what Cliff Hire said about the peer review sort of stuff, there can be implants, and those people with so-called perception can also be infiltrators working with the phantom matrix sort of stuff, right? This is all sort of variables that are going on. So you seek, like I said, triangulation of truth and other variables to externally validate something you can't validate. They might confirm it, and so you accept it, you know? So why I'm using that, alright? So say if you've gone and explored the Ashayana recordings that I've offered on that web page that I've offered, and the links will be below, and you've been pretty thorough, those of you that have invested in them and have got them sort of automatic now, you'll get this, what I'm saying. Those that you haven't, I'm offering you a codex, and it's in the very first recording. It's about the spiritual teachings and the war on the pure spiritual teachings throughout the ages. And she talks about these CDT like plates that hold a lot of data. They're founder tech, they're very old. If you listen to that recording, it's in that. I might, in part 10 or whatever, I might include the clip. I was trying to work it out. But that's the source of the material for you to do homework on, right? So she talks about these CDT tablets that have all the data that she can tune into. And you use your consciousness level to access it. And they're full of the 950 billion years of universal history. And there's 12 of them, blah, blah, blah. So what happened is, she said 208,216 years ago, they actually got the invasion and stuff happened, right? So relative to her teachings and all that, 218,000 years ago, all the war to take over the planet, blah, 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 was going on, right? So, long story short, and I'm just getting to the point because it's 1600, either plate 11 or 12 was regained, right? But she had to wait, or the team that she's working from didn't give her the green light to talk the history of stuff until 1999, alright? And the reason for it is they got back either plate 11 or 10 finally after thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And so because the truth and the technology was safe, she was given the green light to talk, and that's when she started going hardcore on the truth. And Then there was this, the UIR, United Intruder Resistance Alliance, to go after the Guardians and take over Earth relative to the cell activation cycles of the Stargates and all that sort of stuff, right?
All right, so until November 1999 AD, stolen CDD plate 11 remained in Paraclete descent family lines, which became part of the larger Illuminati family lineage known as the Knights Templar and later as the Freemasons. They were reclaimed in 1999, and they couldn't release any information to me on these plates until that last one was secured. In the 1600s, the other one had been recovered. Plate 12 had been recovered. All right, so finally, in November 1999, we could finally get transmission on the plates about the plates. Because I knew the things, I knew what they were, but I couldn't access how to explain this. What are these things? I know they're important. They're holding all this information. All of the information on the plates came through after that one was secured. So they, because it was really, there's been security mission going on here the whole time in this particular time frame. Now, the invasion of Earth and claiming of the Halls of Amente stargates that was intended by the Nibiru and Anunnaki races in 22,326 BC ended in a partial pole shift and a stalemate. A stalemate the Anunnaki intended to resolve to their favor through a final conflict battle scheduled for the next 2000 AD to 2017 AD Stargate opening cycle. They knew way back then that this was the next time the gates would open, and they were planning to stage the final conflict drama to get control of the Halls of Amente stargates.
And so because the truth and the technology was safe, she was given the green light to talk, right? And that's when she started going hardcore on the truth. And then there was this, the UIR, United Intruder Resistance Alliance, to go after the Guardians and take over Earth relative to the cell activation cycles of the Stargates and all that sort of stuff, right? So I've talked all about them. The recordings are there. You've got the past episodes and all that. And this is a cool thing. All right. So say I came across Ashayana late 2021. So say relative to consciousness Tetris, and I've used the metaphor of like the Obi-Wan video series relative to the hunting down of the Magi and the Jedis after the Ayani massacre sort of stuff. So George Lucas is an interesting variable, and how's this, right? This is cool. Because getting the codex of Ashayana stuff has allowed me to flip a lot of stuff and see a lot of truth and see the reverse matrix of stuff, right? And so 1999, right? So what happened in 1999? George Lucas released a new Star Wars film, a prequel, going back in time sort of stuff, right? And the Jedi's ruled, right? And what's the name of that movie in 1999? It's called The Phantom Menace, okay? Phantom Menace. And what was going on around the opening sort of scenes, alright? The very first scene of that is the Trade Federation is doing a blockade around Naboo, alright? So say, if you listen to the clips relative to the Babylon Massacre, it's Galactic Federation, Trade Federation, Galactic Federation, had a lot to do with it, alright? And so what I'm suggesting here is, isn't it interesting George Lucas called that first movie The Phantom Menace? I'm just seeing it as an interesting variable with the context of the Ashayana stuff now. The very first Star Wars, after 15 years, like 1999 compared to the Return of the Jedi, which finished in 2003 and 4. It was a freaking long time. Felt like forever. I don't know, 20 years, 25 years since that. Hasn't felt very long, alright? I don't know. maybe it feels like a long time for you, but it's just fascinating how quickly 20 years has gone. That's why I'm like a big kid still. But I remember I went to that movie, and my mate, the biggest cinema in my city, he used to work there, and he got my mates and all of us passes to the midnight showing on the very first day. So I do remember it. It was very poetic and it was very big. But what I'm offering, Phantom Matrix Menace, the Empire, like Anakin Skywalker is Thoth sort of stuff. Like the Emperor is like Metatron, blah blah blah. The Jedi's are the Indigos, Magi, Guardians sort of stuff. And there's the Betrayal, which is like the Ayani massacre and all that. That's what, like, the second movie where all the warriors switch and go against the Jedi's to take them out throughout the galaxy and stuff, right? But this is what I'm offering, alright? So in that release he said that the quarantine was down, right? What I'm doing is, how do you feel the world has gone since 2018? Do you think it's like better or worse? Things are easier or better, alright? My attitude is, it's a lot worse, alright? So the way I'm perceiving things is, I'm actually seeing there's an embargo on, and I'm flipping that, because what he said is we are the perpetrators of bad in the universe, right? When in actual fact, when you understand what's going on, alright, there's an effort to take over control of Earth, and it's been battled for a long time. The way I'm seeing it is that there's an embargo on, and I'm very, very fucking wary of any off-world stuff. I've worked with the Acturians in 3 very epic beings, and they've come through and done surgery and stuff, and I'm open to the fact that I've got Acturian allies, or I'm part Acturian and all that. Max Steele said it in one of the live interviews I did with him that are on my channel. But my bar of discernment is raised to the maximum on non-external sort of stuff, because what I'm processing out of all this is that the effort to disarm on the external is like us opening the door to violations and trusting all that stuff, when we should actually have the bar of discernment up, because of trying to take us out is epic, alright? So it's getting really dark, and I've been going a long time. But isn't it interesting? This isn't just going against sort of stuff. This is just, holy fuck, you know? Oh my goodness. Like we've trusted and disarmed when we should have our guard up, alright? Because stuff is going on. So this is quite late, and I just wanted to offer that, alright? So the trader, you probably can't see it, but I'm going to have the image next to me. So I've invited a contemplation of the contrarian view, alright? And reverse matrix, what is said, it's probably the opposite, alright? Because it's very interesting times, and there's a lot going on, and for myself, I can see all the codex, like the consciousness Tetris, where I've just accepted stuff in the past and I've needed to change, and I can explore the angles like a flow chart, all the directions, and lean into them and feel what's right. And I wouldn't be saying this unless it was pretty big. Just contemplate all those variables, explore the information and sources, and see what you get, alright? I'm not telling you that's how it is. This is how I'm seeing it. I'm offering it, and this is the mechanics of how to discern and how to discern me, because I can actually see through all this stuff, and I want to impart it to you to contemplate, because it might be the codex to flip a lot of blocks upside down. Alright, so yeah, this is already probably quite long, and it's very interesting. I'm not doing it out of polarity or anything. I'm just offering it as my experience and where I'm at. and why I'm going this path and why I'm going hardcore into it. Because I feel there's a lot out there that's actually setting us up for failure still. And there's a lot going on in this world, but there's also a lot of potential, as I said, about the technology. And I'll put this next to me, and I'll put it a bit earlier, but what I'm getting is there's a huge potential of the innate body technology bubbling up, which I'll get into more in the next one if I need more to say. Go deeper, guys. You guys out there with the talents and stuff, you might be the traders of the awareness to get through, to break it open, to help us. Those of us that I feel like I'm already in line with it. That's why I'm doing the Earth Mother pranic healings and stuff. And it feels different than what you think it might feel. You might already be there and you doubt it and all that sort of stuff. But those of you with the talents and Guardian Alliance, like my attitude is Phantom Matrix beings won't be able to go through. They only get their radio body and they think that's their truth. And there's a lot out there they're being putting out there that could be infiltrators and stuff trying to destroy like the Ashayana sort of perspectives, right? One example of Akashic Reader was Chris Thomas back in 2010. He's the guy that I came across first. And a variable of his that was just like, what the fuck? He used to say there was 3.7 billion people on the planet. I was like, with all the other stuff you're saying, you drop a little variable like that just like, if you're looking for the wrong and the right and you cast out someone the wrong, then you might dismiss the records and stuff because of that. And maybe I should have back then, but I was just saying that as a variable with him because he was a pathway that I came across that sort of offered that concept. But what I'm suggesting is the guardian types of the 12D access. You can probably go beyond to the internet that the indigenous and the aboriginals have had, because I've operated with the indigenous and I know they connect to it. Like the aboriginals, they connect to the song lines between tribes. They don't need technology and stuff. So yeah, see what happens with your body technology, your amazing technology despite all this stuff. And I'm just going to leave it here because it is dark and you can't see me. And I'll offer this big variable and just process and contemplate it and see what you get. And interesting times, guys. It might be a really powerful teaching and reference variable for you to launch from. So I thank you for being here. And Andre Hodge in the dark, shining light on the BS and the truth and offering you a fast track to your awareness potentially. Until next time, lots of love, guys. Andre out.
The history here is a riot, but it's also sad. And what's really sad is the little bit of it that has come down through what we call the Bible, and there's some little bits of it in the Koran and those kind of things. There's little bits here and there. But we get into the Atlantean conspiracy. I'm going to run down, we've mentioned some of these events as went through the first part of that. This is going back a little bit further. Now, some of the Atlantean history is in Voyages, Volume 2 as well, where it tells how Atlantis was first a large continent, and then certain things were done with the Illuminati races that created major implosions of their massive crystal pylon technologies. That ended up sinking portions of the land and literally sucking part of it down in Phantom Matrix. Well, the reason I can't find a lot of it, like where is that continent? Because literally it demanifested through the grids and was pulled into the black hole system. So they're going to have a hard time finding all of Atlantis because part of it's down there. Now, Atlantis turned into an island community, large islands, and they were Lohas up in the northeast. There was Brua, Atlantis, down in the south, a little bit west, and there was Nohasa. The whole Noah story came out of Nohasa, Atlantis, and the Illuminati race lines that were coming out of there. When we get into this history, we start to find out what the Exodus was about in the Bible. And you know what's so sad? This is one of the things that I just feel so bad for the Jewish people, because they have been conned into believing that was them. It wasn't even a Jewish Exodus. It was the Hyksos, Knights Templar, Illuminati, Leviathan races that were getting kicked out of Egypt by a competing force of draconian Illuminati races. The history here has been so twisted. So we're going to start to unravel that twist, because these twists are in our memory banks on a race level, which means they're in our DNA as twisted codes. They're also in our radial bodies. The radial body is a part of our 15-dimensional anatomy that, you know how we've talked about Huva bodies, those, you know, circles of energy around us, the three-dimensional egg-shaped spheres of energy around us. Well, around each one of those, there's something called a radial body. The radial body is created, it is formed of what are called muons and trion units. They are pre-light, pre-sound units. The radial body becomes very important. Planets have them too, universes have them, harmonic universes. The radial bodies hold the memory imprint of a person or a species or a planet. The distortions that we have now in our DNA template, thanks to the planetary grids, have totally distorted the natural pictures, memory pictures, the digital coding that would give us our natural memory. That's why we don't remember any of it, and they've progressively been recoding it to match Nibiruan memory. So by the time we got in here, they got back in here, we would simply look at them and know them as if they were our creator gods. So this whole thing comes back to, if we learn this history, we see what's being done, we can unravel what was done. We can unravel it in our minds, but also in our gene codes, which means we're going to heal our radial bodies through bringing these frequencies of the true history records in. It'll help to heal the memory twists and the blank spots that are in our radial bodies. By doing that, we'll be able to run more frequency. And when we can understand what has been done here, that's the only way we're going to understand how we can fix it. How is a round table going to fix all this mess, and how is all this mess related to, you know, the pieces of it? How are they related? So we're going to find out about that as we progress through the history. We'll go from the history into the technologies that we're used to do this, and into what we can do to begin the process of healing it. Now, what's interesting is where that reading left off, we've been given a lot more information since last September. We will learn something about the 10,500 BC period. That has to do directly with Philadelphia Experiment and Montauk Project. Has to do with wormholes. That becomes a very significant element of understanding the history and understanding what we have to do here. There's also another part of the information that was given in October, I believe, that has to do with APIN systems, which are Atlantean Pylon Implant Network systems. They're like microchip grids that are literally implanted all through our planetary grids and the planetary shields. And there are a whole bunch of competing ones that at this point, they are coming into activation, and through the United Intruder Resistance, because everybody's putting their grids together to try to combat the Founders' races and stop the Christos realignment. This is what we are literally being hit with. Frequency fence. We are in the middle of an attempt to create a global frequency fence at this point. The round table that we're doing here, and I had no idea until they gave it to, you know, the rest of the security data to me this morning, has to do with making it very difficult for that to happen. Because if the world, if the planetary grids start to carry what's called a frequency fence more than they already have, it will stop the DNA activation that would normally be occurring in people, which means all the frequencies that are still coming in can't process through the DNA, so it'll make people sick progressively.
Now, listen, the Quero make it very clear that we have to behave as though none of this is based in any kind of reality. We shouldn't have an attachment to this happening. We've got to focus on bringing about the changes that we want to see in the physical empirical material realm. And if we do that and we visualize, then the rest will unfold naturally. Rudolf Steiner made this observation. He said, "He who would create the new must be able to endure the passing of the old in full tranquility." This is why I said this morning, you know, when I was talking about the stuff about having the food and the water and doing the stuff with any assets you got, the gold, it's so that you can free yourself. You don't have to worry about the foraging. You can free yourself to focus on the things that really matter. One of the positions that it's probably a good place to be right now is if you have nothing, you are in great shape. Because you have no attachment to anything. And I know it's a sort of, it's a regurgitation of even more ancient wisdom, but as somebody once said, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. This is simply a reference to attachment. There's nothing wrong in having accoutrements. It only becomes a problem if there's an attachment to them. So one can argue that if you have nothing, you are relieved of that burden. If you have assets, there's nothing wrong in having them, there's nothing wrong in protecting them. But don't be too attached to them. Whilst we need them, great. But maybe we're coming to a time when we don't need them. I think this is a truly exciting period. It's a massively exciting period. And how did I find Alberto Villoldo initially? Because I was becoming aware that, we were going through an evolutionary process, and I came up with the term Homo luminous. And I thought, that's a good term. Wonder if anybody's ever thought of that. Googled it, Alberto Villoldo, 20 years ago.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.